The barking wouldn't stop. 3 days straight now, and Max was still frantically pawing at the basement wall, his golden fur standing on end. Lauren Bennett watched her normally gentle retriever transform into something wild, desperate to tell them something they couldn't understand. When her 6-year-old son, Ethan, whispered, "Mommy, I think someone's trapped in there," she'd laughed it off. But now, as the flashlight beam caught something glinting in the fresh crack of the crumbling wall, Lauren's blood ran cold. A small plastic arm, a doll's arm, and behind it, darkness that shouldn't exist. Before we dive into this chilling story, I'm curious, where are you watching from right now, and what time is it there? Let me know in the comments below. If this is your first time joining us, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Lauren Bennett believed in fresh starts. As a child psychologist specializing in trauma, she'd witnessed countless stories of healing and resilience. Now, standing in the driveway of their inherited home, a charming colonial with blue shutters and a wraparound porch, she felt that same promise of renewal. "What do you think, buddy?" she asked, squeezing her son's small hand. 6-year-old Ethan looked up at her with wide brown eyes, uncertainty written across his face. "It's big," he said simply. Mark, her husband of 8 years, came up behind them, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "It's perfect," he whispered. "Your uncle left us a gift we couldn't have dreamed of affording on our own." Lauren nodded, though something in her chest tightened. Uncle Calvin had been a distant relative, her father's cousin who she'd met only twice. The inheritance had come as a complete surprise. According to the lawyer, Calvin had no children of his own, and had remembered Lauren fondly from their brief meetings. Max, their 3-year-old golden retriever, bounded up the porch steps, tail wagging excitedly. At least someone was enthusiastic. The moving truck arrived, and the day dissolved into a blur of boxes and furniture placement. By evening their beds were assembled, the kitchen partially unpacked, and exhaustion had settled into Lauren's bones. That night, after tucking Ethan in, Lauren found herself drawn to the basement door. The previous owners, or rather Uncle Calvin, had used it mainly for storage according to the real estate listing. She flicked on the light and descended the wooden stairs. The basement was unfinished but clean. Concrete floors, exposed beams, and a washer-dryer set up in one corner. Nothing remarkable, yet Lauren felt a strange heaviness in the air. Probably just mustiness from being closed up, she told herself. As she turned to leave, Max appeared at the top of the stairs. He stood rigid, ears perked forward, staring past her toward the far wall. "What is it, boy? Come on down." She patted her thigh. Max remained frozen, a low whine building in his throat. "Fine, stay there. I'm coming up anyway." Lauren climbed the stairs, closing the door behind her. She chalked it up to new house jitters. Dogs could be sensitive to change. That night, Lauren dreamed of children's voices, distant and muffled, like they were calling through thick walls. She woke with a start at 3:17 a.m., heart pounding, listening to the unfamiliar creaks of their new home. And somewhere, far below, the sound of Max's nails scratching persistently against wood. 3 days after moving in, Lauren couldn't ignore Max's behavior any longer. The normally laid-back retriever had become obsessed with the basement, specifically the northern wall behind the old shelving units. He would bark, scratch, and whine until someone came to investigate, only to find nothing out of the ordinary. "I'm telling you, something's not right with him," Lauren said, stirring her coffee as Mark rushed to get ready for work. "He was up all night again." Mark sighed, adjusting his tie. "New house, new smells. Maybe there's mice in the walls. I'll pick up some traps on the way home." Lauren watched her husband kiss Ethan's head before heading out. Mark was the practical one. Logical, steady, always looking for the simplest explanation. Usually she appreciated that balance to her more intuitive nature. Today, it felt dismissive. After dropping Ethan at his new school, Lauren returned home, determined to solve the mystery. She found Max exactly where she expected, in the basement, staring at the wall. "Okay, Max, show me what's got you so worked up." She approached slowly, running her hands along the painted cinderblock surface. Nothing seemed unusual until her fingers detected a slight change in texture. A vertical seam where there shouldn't be one. Lauren stepped back, examining the wall more carefully. The paint color matched perfectly, but now that she was paying attention, she could see it. A section about 8 feet wide looked newer than the surrounding wall. Max whined, pawing at the bottom edge where the wall met the floor. Lauren knelt beside him and noticed a small crack forming. The mortar was crumbling slightly. "Good boy," she whispered, suddenly understanding her dog's fixation. "There's something behind here, isn't there?" She retreated upstairs to call Mark, who predictably told her not to worry about it. "It's probably just a repair job from water damage or something. We can have someone look at it when we renovate." Lauren agreed, but curiosity nagged at her. That afternoon, while unpacking boxes of books in the living room, she heard a crash from below. She raced downstairs to find Max barking frantically at the wall where a chunk of cinder block had crumbled away, leaving a hole about the size of her fist. Heart racing, Lauren approached and shined her phone's flashlight into the cavity. The beam caught something small and plastic. She reached in carefully and pulled out a tiny plastic arm. A doll's arm, discolored with age. "What on earth?" she muttered, turning it over in her palm. Ethan's voice startled her. "Mommy, what's Max barking at?" Lauren spun around to see her son standing at the bottom of the stairs, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. "Nothing, honey. Just something in the wall. Probably an old toy left by whoever lived here before." But even as she said it, something cold settled in her stomach. The doll part looked old, vintage, maybe from the 1980s, and was coated with a film of dust. If the wall had been added later, what was it hiding, and why would a child's toy be sealed inside? That night, as Mark examined the crumbling wall, his expression grew serious. "This isn't right," he admitted. "This section of wall is definitely newer than the rest of the foundation. See how the mortar pattern changes? And it's not supporting anything structural." "So why is it there?" Lauren asked. Mark shrugged. "Could be covering old damage. Or maybe they sectioned off part of the basement for some reason. The house is over 70 years old. People renovate in weird ways. And the toy? Probably fell in during construction. Look, we were planning to renovate down here anyway. Let's call a contractor tomorrow." Lauren nodded, but that night she lay awake, thinking about the doll arm and the strange wall. In her professional work with traumatized children, she'd learned to trust her instincts. And right now, every instinct was screaming that something was very wrong with their new home. The contractor couldn't come for another week. For Lauren, that was too long to wait. "I need to know what's behind that wall," she told Mark over breakfast. Ethan was still asleep upstairs, giving them a rare moment alone. Mark set down his coffee. "Why can't you just wait? Joe's the best contractor in town. He'll handle it properly." "Because I can't sleep, Mark. Max is going crazy. I'm having nightmares, and She trailed off, unable to articulate the growing dread that filled her every time she thought about the basement. Mark studied her face. After 8 years of marriage, he knew when Lauren's concerns went beyond normal anxiety. "This is really bothering you, isn't it?" She nodded. "I can't explain it. Call it professional intuition or whatever. But something feels wrong about that wall." He sighed. "Fine. I have meetings all day, but there's a sledgehammer in the garage. If you're determined to do this, at least wait until I get home. We'll do it together." Lauren agreed, but the moment Mark's car disappeared down the driveway and Ethan was safely delivered to school, she found herself back in the basement. Max paced anxiously beside her as she examined the crumbling section more thoroughly. The crack had widened overnight. Using a screwdriver from Mark's toolbox, Lauren carefully pried away loose pieces of mortar and cinder block. It came away easier than she expected, suggesting it had been hastily constructed. "What are we going to find, Max?" she whispered, working methodically. After 20 minutes, she had created an opening about 2 feet wide. Cool air rushed out, carrying a stale, long-trapped smell. Lauren shined her flashlight through the hole, but couldn't see much, just empty space beyond. The sensible thing would be to wait for Mark, but Lauren was too far in now. She grabbed the sledgehammer from the garage and, with several careful swings, widened the opening enough to step through. What she found stopped her cold. Behind the false wall was a small room, about 8 feet by 10 feet. The space was empty except for a thin, dirty mattress in one corner, a bucket in another, and a small shelf bolted to the wall. The shelf held a few children's books, yellowed with age, and a plastic water cup. But it was the walls that made Lauren's blood run cold. They were covered with tally marks and small, crude drawings, the kind made by children. Some depicted stick figures, houses, and smiling suns. Others were darker scenes of people crying or strange, cramped spaces. "Oh my God," Lauren whispered, her psychologist's mind immediately understanding what she was seeing. This wasn't just a room, it was a cell. Someone had kept people here, children, based on the drawings and small items. In the far corner, partially hidden under the mattress, she spotted a metal box. Her hands trembling, Lauren pulled it out and opened it. Inside were children's possessions, hair clips, small toys, a few faded photographs, and what looked like identification bracelets, the kind used in hospitals or institutions. One photo showed a small girl, perhaps 7 or 8, with sad eyes and 2 missing front teeth. On the back, written in childish handwriting, "Emily, 1992. Lauren stumbled back, her professional composure crumbling. This wasn't some renovation oddity or old storage space. This was evidence of something terrible. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone and called the police. Officer Jenkins arrived 30 minutes later, his initial skepticism vanishing the moment he saw the hidden room. He radioed for backup, his face grim. "Ma'am, I need you to step outside while we secure the scene," he said, already snapping photos. "But this is my house," Lauren protested. "I found it." "I understand, but this is now a potential crime scene. We'll need statements from you and your husband." His expression softened slightly. "How long have you owned this property?" "Less than a week. It was inherited from my uncle Calvin Pierce. He owned it for about 5 years, I think." The officer nodded, making notes. "And before him?" "I don't know. The real estate information should be in our paperwork upstairs." As more police arrived, Lauren called Mark, who rushed home immediately. When he saw the hidden room and the growing number of police vehicles outside their home, his face drained of color. "What have we gotten ourselves into?" he whispered, holding Lauren tightly. Detective Olivia Reyes arrived last, a stern-faced woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun. She interviewed them in their kitchen, while forensics technicians worked in the basement. According to county records, Detective Reyes said, reviewing notes on her tablet, "Before your uncle, this house belonged to Harold Miller from 1979 to 2015. He was a social worker with the county for over 30 years. Lauren felt a chill. A social worker? Someone who worked with children? Yes. Specialized in difficult placements for foster children. The detective's eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Bennett, given your profession, I assume you understand the implications of what you found." Lauren nodded, her throat tight. "Someone kept children in that room, probably against their will." "That's our working theory," Reyes confirmed. "Based on the items we've found and the construction of the room, we believe multiple children may have been held there over a period of years." Mark ran his hands through his hair. "So our house belonged to some kind of... what? A kidnapper?" "We don't know yet. Miller died in 2015, which is when your uncle acquired the property." Reyes leveled her gaze at them. "What's concerning is that this room was deliberately concealed. Someone built that wall to hide evidence." "Could my uncle have known?" Lauren asked, the thought making her queasy. "We'll be investigating that possibility," Reyes said carefully. "For now, I need to ask you both to stay available for further questions. We'll be working here for several hours, possibly days." As the detective left to rejoin her team, Mark turned to Lauren, his face ashen. "What do we tell Ethan? How do we stay in this house now that we know?" Lauren stared out the window at the police cars lining their driveway, neighbors gathering curiously across the street. Their fresh start had become a nightmare, one that connected directly to her professional world of childhood trauma and abuse. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I do know I can't just walk away from this." Those children, whoever they were, they deserve answers. Justice. Mark nodded slowly, understanding his wife's determination, even as fear clouded his eyes. Then, we'll face it together, he said, squeezing her hand. But I'm afraid our lives just got a lot more complicated. Lauren looked down at Max, who sat vigilantly at her feet. Good boy, she whispered. You knew all along, didn't you? The retriever's intelligent eyes seemed to hold secrets of their own, secrets that were only beginning to come to light in their new home with the hidden past. The police remained at their house until well past midnight. Lauren arranged for Ethan to stay with Mark's parents, telling him there was a problem with the basement they needed to fix. At 6, he was too young to understand the horror they'd discovered, but old enough to sense his parents' distress. When can I come home? He'd asked, clutching his dinosaur. Soon, buddy, Mark had promised. Grandma and Grandpa are excited for a sleepover. Now, sitting at their kitchen table at 1 a.m., Lauren and Mark listened grimly as Detective Reyes delivered her preliminary findings. We've recovered multiple items of evidence, she explained, dark circles under her eyes. Children's clothing, toys, books, all dating from the mid-1980s through early 2000s. Most concerning are these. She placed several plastic evidence bags on the table. They contained hospital-style ID bracelets, each bearing a name and date. Emily Saunders, 1992. Jason Wilder, 1988. Tara Lewis, 1997. Reyes read, We've identified 11 distinct children so far. Lauren felt physically ill. Were these kidnapping victims? Reyes hesitated. That's unclear. Miller was a social worker, specializing in difficult-to-place foster children. These could be children who passed through the system legitimately. There's nothing legitimate about locking children in a hidden room, Mark said sharply. I agree, Reyes nodded. We're pulling Miller's employment records and case files. The working theory is that he was using his position to traffic children, possibly keeping them temporarily in this room during transfers. Lauren's professional training kicked in. A staging area, she murmured. Somewhere to keep them between placements that weren't official. Exactly. The tally marks on the wall suggest some children were kept there for extended periods, weeks, possibly months. Mark shook his head in disbelief. And no one noticed. Children just disappeared and nobody cared. Foster children fall through the cracks all the time, Lauren said softly, years of professional heartbreak in her voice. Especially those labeled problem cases. They get shuffled around, records get lost, and if they run away or disappear, sometimes the system is relieved. Reyes nodded grimly. We're cross-referencing these names with missing persons reports and foster system records. Tomorrow, we'd like to bring in a forensic team to check for DNA evidence. Of course, Lauren agreed. Whatever you need. After the detective left, Lauren and Mark sat in stunned silence. I can't stop thinking about them, Lauren finally said. Those children, trapped down there, marking days on the wall. Mark reached across the table and took her hand. This happened before we came here, Lauren. Before your uncle owned the place. There was no way to know. But now we do know. And I can't just... I understand, Mark said gently. You wouldn't be the woman I married if you could walk away from this. The next day brought more police. More evidence collection. Lauren took a personal day from her practice, unable to focus on her patients while her home was a crime scene. Around noon, she found herself drawn to the local library's archives section, searching for information about Harold Miller. The librarian helped her locate several newspaper articles from the 1980s and 90s. Dedicated social worker finds homes for impossible children, read one headline from 1986. The accompanying photo showed a middle-aged man with thinning hair and glasses, arm around a smiling child. Harold Miller was described as a miracle worker who specialized in placing children that other social workers had given up on. He had a gift for matching troubled children with the right families. The article quoted a supervisor saying, "Children that were headed for institutions suddenly thrived under his care." Lauren felt cold, despite the library's warmth. The article painted Miller as a saint, but she now knew the horrifying truth behind his success. How many children had suffered in that room? Where had they ended up? Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Reyes. "Need to speak with you," New developments. Can you come home? When Lauren arrived, she found Reyes in their kitchen with an elderly man she introduced as Frank Delaney, a retired detective. Frank worked missing persons in the 90s, Reyes explained. He recognized Miller's name immediately. Delaney nodded, his weathered face grim. I always knew something was off with that man. Had suspicions about several cases connected to him, but could never prove anything. What kind of suspicions? Lauren asked. Children who disappeared from the system. Foster kids who supposedly ran away, but left all their belongings. Strange placements that couldn't be verified. He shook his head. The system was overloaded, understaffed. Miller had a sterling reputation and powerful friends. My concerns were dismissed as paranoia. Until now, Reyes added. Frank kept his own records after retirement. He's identified 3 of our bracelet names as children who went missing while under Miller's supervision. Lauren's heart raced. Have you found them? Are they alive? The detectives exchanged grim looks. We found Emily Saunders, Reyes said quietly. Remains discovered in woodland about 50 miles from here in 2001. Never identified until now. Lauren sank into a chair, tears burning her eyes. She was murdered? Cause of death undetermined, but the remains showed evidence of long-term abuse. Reyes hesitated. We've also recovered DNA evidence from the hidden room. Multiple profiles. We're running them through databases now. That night, after the police finally left, Lauren sat alone in their living room, surrounded by moving boxes they hadn't finished unpacking. Mark had gone to his parents' house to check on Ethan. The house felt cavernous, haunted not by ghosts but by the very real suffering that had occurred within its walls. Max lay at her feet, his vigilance finally relaxed, now that the hidden room was exposed. Lauren scratched behind his ears. You were trying to tell us all along, she whispered. You knew they needed to be found. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Mrs. Bennett, this is Nurse Chambers at Riverside Care Center. I understand you've been asking about Harold Miller. Lauren sat up straight. Yes, that's right. His wife is one of our residents. Alzheimer's, advanced stage. But she has moments of clarity. The nurse paused. She's been saying some disturbing things lately. About children in the walls. Lauren's blood ran cold. I'll be there first thing tomorrow. As she hung up, she noticed a shadow pass by the living room window. Someone outside watching the house. By the time she reached the window, whoever it was had disappeared into the darkness. Lauren double-checked the locks on all the doors. A growing sense of unease settling over her. The more they uncovered about Miller's operation, the more she wondered, had he worked alone, or were there others involved? Others who might still be out there, watching their investigation unfold. The house creaked and settled around her, its secrets only beginning to emerge from behind its walls. The Riverside Care Center smelled of antiseptic and overcooked vegetables. Lauren followed Nurse Chambers down a corridor lined with residents in wheelchairs, some staring vacantly, others tracking her with curious eyes. Mrs. Miller has good days and bad days, Chambers explained in a hushed tone. This morning she seems fairly lucid, but that could change quickly. They stopped outside room 217. Through the partially open door, Lauren saw an elderly woman with wispy white hair sitting by the window, a knitted blanket across her lap. Mrs. Miller, you have a visitor, Chambers announced cheerfully. Evelyn Miller turned slowly, rheumy eyes narrowing as she examined Lauren. Are you from the church? I told them, I don't want any more visits. No, ma'am, Lauren said gently, taking a seat beside her. My name is Lauren Bennett. I recently moved into your former home on Maple Street. Something flickered across the old woman's face. Recognition. Then fear. Has the wall come down? She asked, her voice suddenly sharp. Lauren's pulse quickened. Yes, Mrs. Miller. We found the room behind the wall. Evelyn's hands began to tremble. I told Harold it was wrong. Those poor children. But he said they were better off with us than where they'd been going. Mrs. Miller, I need to understand what happened in that house, Lauren said carefully. The police are investigating now. Police? Panic flashed in Evelyn's eyes. No, they can't know. The others will be angry. What others, Mrs. Miller? Who else was involved? But Evelyn's momentary clarity was slipping. Her eyes grew distant, hands plucking restlessly at her blanket. Harold keeps the bad ones downstairs, just until he finds them special homes. Special homes for special children. Lauren leaned closer. These special homes, where were they sending the children? Evelyn smiled vacantly. All over. Important people. They pay well for the special ones. A chill ran through Lauren. This wasn't just about one deranged social worker. Miller had been operating a trafficking network, using his position to funnel vulnerable children to paying clients. Mrs. Miller, do you remember any of these important people? Their names? But Evelyn had retreated completely now, humming a lullaby and rocking slightly. Nurse Chambers touched Lauren's shoulder. I'm afraid you've lost her for today. Once she starts singing, she's back in the past. Lauren thanked the nurse and left, her mind racing. She immediately called Detective Reyes to relay what she'd learned. This confirms our suspicions, Reyes said grimly. We're looking at a trafficking operation that potentially lasted decades. She mentioned others who would be angry about the police investigation. Lauren added, I think some of Miller's associates might still be active. There was a pause on the line. Mrs. Bennett, have you noticed anyone unusual around your house? Any strange vehicles or people watching? Lauren thought of the shadow she'd seen last night. Maybe. Why? Because we just got the DNA results back. One sample from the room shows a familial match to you. The world seemed to tilt beneath Lauren's feet. What? That's impossible. The match suggests a distant relative, perhaps a second or third cousin. Given that you inherited the house from your uncle, we need to consider the possibility that your family has some connection to this case. Lauren's thoughts whirled. Uncle Calvin had been her father's cousin, a man she barely knew. Could he have been involved? Is that why he'd owned the house? When she arrived home, Lauren found an unmarked envelope in their mailbox. Inside was a single photograph, their house, taken recently, with Ethan visible playing in the front yard. On the back, written in block letters, "Stop digging." Her hands shaking, Lauren called Mark. You need to stay at your parents' with Ethan. Don't come home. Lauren, what's happening? Someone's threatening us. The police found DNA in that room that's connected to my family somehow. I think, her voice broke. I think Uncle Calvin might have been part of Miller's network. Mark was silent for a moment. I'm calling Detective Reyes. You shouldn't be alone there. I'll be fine. Max is with me, and I'm going to... A noise from upstairs cut her off. The sound of breaking glass. Someone was in the house. Lauren, what was that? Mark's voice sounded distant as adrenaline surged through her. Call the police, she whispered, already moving toward the back door. Max at her heels. Someone's here. She slipped outside just as heavy footsteps descended the stairs. Running to her car, she glimpsed a man in a dark jacket, exiting through their front door. He saw her and started in her direction, but the wail of approaching sirens sent him running toward a parked van down the street. When Detective Reyes arrived minutes later, the intruder was long gone, but he'd left something behind. Lauren's home office had been ransacked, her computer stolen. They're looking for information, Reyes concluded. Anything you might have discovered about Miller's operation. But I don't have anything, Lauren protested. Everything I know, I've told you. Reyes's expression was grave. Someone thinks otherwise. Mrs. Bennett, I strongly recommend you stay elsewhere until we sort this out. Lauren packed a bag and checked into a hotel under Mark's name. That night, as she tried to sleep in the sterile room with Max curled protectively at her feet, her phone rang again. Another unknown number. Lauren Bennett, a woman's voice, tentative but determined. Who is this? My name is Sarah Winters. Emily Saunders was my foster sister. I was in that room too. Lauren sat bolt upright. You were one of Miller's victims. Yes. And I've been following the news about your discovery. Sarah paused. There are things you need to know. Things I've never told anyone. I'm listening, Lauren said, her heart pounding. Not over the phone. Meet me tomorrow at the West Side Diner, noon. Come alone. The line went dead before Lauren could respond. She immediately called Reyes, who advised caution, but agreed to have plainclothes officers nearby during the meeting. Tomorrow, Lauren might finally get answers about what had really happened in their house, and why someone was so desperate to keep those secrets buried. As she finally drifted to sleep, her dreams were filled with children's voices and tally marks, scratched into endless walls. The West Side diner buzzed with lunchtime chatter. Lauren sat in a back booth, nervously scanning each new customer. Max lay at her feet, specially permitted as a therapy dog thanks to Detective Reyes's intervention. Lauren had spotted the plainclothes officer reading a newspaper 3 booths away. At exactly noon, a woman in her 30s with short auburn hair and watchful eyes approached. "Lauren Bennett? Sarah Winters?" The woman nodded, sliding into the booth. Her gaze fell on Max, and her posture relaxed slightly. "Dogs know," she said quietly. "They always know when something's wrong." Lauren studied Sarah's face, searching for traces of the frightened child she must have been. "Thank you for meeting me. I understand how difficult this must be." Sarah's laugh held no humor. "Difficult doesn't begin to cover it. I've spent 20 years trying to forget that house." She pulled a worn photograph from her pocket and placed it on the table. "That's me and Emily. Summer of '92. The photo showed 2 young girls, arms around each other, standing before a state park sign. One was the same sad-eyed child from the photo Lauren had found in the hidden room. "You were in foster care together?" Sarah nodded. 4 months at the Hendersons. Then Miller showed up one day saying he'd found Emily a special placement. 3 days later, he came for me too. Her fingers tightened around her coffee cup. "We weren't the only ones. There were others who passed through that room." "How long were you kept there?" 11 days. I counted every mark I made on that wall. Sarah's eyes grew distant. Miller would come down each morning and evening, bring food, empty the bucket. Sometimes he'd take one of us upstairs to bathe. Never saw his wife, though we could hear her moving around above us. Lauren leaned forward. "Sarah, do you know where the children were sent after that room?" "Different places. Emily went first. Miller said she was going to a family that could appreciate her special qualities." Sarah's voice hardened. "I never saw her again, until you found her remains." "And you? Where did he send you?" "I was luckier, or maybe just less valuable to them. After 11 days, I was placed with a regular foster family in the next county. Legitimate paperwork. Everything above board. Like the room never happened." "Did you tell anyone?" Sarah's bitter smile was answer enough. A traumatized 12-year-old claiming a respected social worker kept her in a secret room, against his sterling reputation and community standing. "I tried once. My foster mother called me a liar and threatened to send me back to him if I didn't straighten up." Lauren felt sick. The system that should have protected these children had enabled their abuse. "Sarah, the police found DNA evidence in that room. They think Miller was part of a larger trafficking network." Sarah nodded slowly. "He wasn't working alone. Sometimes at night, other men would come. I'd hear them upstairs, talking, laughing. Once I heard Miller say something about merchandise and special clients." "Do you remember any names? Anything about these men?" "I was 12 and terrified. But," Sarah hesitated, "there was one name I remember. They called him the Judge. Miller seemed scared of him." Lauren's blood ran cold. A judge would have had power, community respect, and influence over the foster care system. "One more thing," Sarah said, pulling out a small notebook. "I stole this from Miller's desk during one of my baths upstairs. I've kept it all these years, afraid to show anyone. But when I saw the news about your discovery, I knew it was time." The notebook contained lists of initials, dates, and amounts. A transaction record. The most frequent entry was simply TJ, followed by large dollar figures. "The Judge," Lauren murmured. Sarah nodded. "Keep it. Give it to your detective. Maybe now someone will finally believe me." As their meeting concluded, Lauren felt a strange mixture of horror and vindication. Sarah's testimony confirmed their worst suspicions while providing crucial new evidence. Outside the diner, as they said goodbye, Sarah gripped Lauren's arm. "Be careful. These men, if any are still alive, they have everything to lose if this comes out." Lauren returned to the hotel to find Mark waiting with Ethan. Her heart swelled at the sight of her son playing innocently with his dinosaurs, unaware of the darkness they were uncovering. "What did she tell you?" Mark asked. Once Ethan was absorbed in a cartoon. Lauren showed him the notebook. Evidence of a trafficking operation involving someone called the Judge. "Sarah believes Miller was moving children through our house to sell them to wealthy clients." Mark paled. "And the DNA matched to your family?" "I still don't know. I need to ask my mother about Uncle Calvin. How well she knew him. His connection to Miller." That evening, while Mark took Ethan swimming in the hotel pool, Lauren called her mother in Arizona. "Calvin?" her mother repeated. "I only met him a few times at family gatherings. He was always odd, kept to himself." "Do you know how he knew Harold Miller, the previous owner of his house?" A long pause. "Calvin worked for the county too, Lauren. Not as a social worker, in records management, I think." "Why are you asking these questions?" Lauren's stomach dropped. Records management would have given Uncle Calvin access to files, the ability to alter paperwork, hide discrepancies. "Mom, I need you to think carefully. Did Dad ever mention anything unusual about Calvin? Any concerns?" Her mother's voice lowered. "Your father stopped speaking to Calvin years before he died. Never told me why. Just said Calvin was involved in something unforgivable. I assumed it was money troubles, or something sordid." Lauren ended the call and immediately dialed Detective Reyes, relaying both her conversation with Sarah and the new information about her uncle. "This confirms our suspicions about your uncle's involvement," Reyes said grimly. "And the judge gives us a solid lead. There were only 3 judges handling juvenile and family court cases during that period. What's our next step?" "We've reopened cases of missing foster children during Miller's tenure, and we're investigating the 3 judges." Reyes paused. "Mrs. Bennett, I need to ask you something difficult. The DNA we found, it shows a familial connection not just to you but potentially to your son." Lauren felt like the floor had dropped away beneath her. "What are you saying?" "The DNA suggests one of Miller's victims may be related to your husband's family, not yours. Has Mark ever mentioned family members who went missing or were in foster care?" "No. Never," Lauren whispered, stunned. "His parents adopted him as an infant. Private adoption, through a church organization." Silence hung heavy over the line. "Mrs. Bennett, I think you and your husband should come in tomorrow. There's more we need to discuss." As Lauren hung up, a horrible realization dawned. Mark's adoption in the early 1980s. The DNA connection, the timing of Miller's operation. Could her husband be connected to the trafficking ring not as a perpetrator's relative, but as a victim's? Lauren watched Mark closely, as Detective Reyes laid out the evidence. His face had drained of color, hands gripping the conference room table so tightly his knuckles showed white. "The DNA analysis suggests you may be related to one of the victims who passed through that room," Reyes explained gently. "Given your adoption history and the timeline, we believe you might be connected to the trafficking operation as a victim, not a perpetrator." Mark stared at the papers before him, his world visibly crumbling. "My parents told me it was a closed adoption, through Heritage Family Services, a teenage mother who couldn't keep me." Reyes nodded. Heritage Family Services was a legitimate agency on paper, but we've discovered Miller served on their board of directors from 1982 to 1994. Prime years of the trafficking operation. "Are you saying I was—" Mark couldn't finish the sentence. "We don't know yet," Reyes said carefully. "But we'd like to compare your DNA with samples from the room and missing persons cases from that era." Lauren reached for Mark's hand. He'd been her rock through this nightmare. Now it was her turn to support him. "What about my parents?" Mark asked, voice hollow. "Did they know? Were they part of this?" "We have no evidence suggesting your adoptive parents were aware of any illegality," Reyes assured him. "Many families who adopted through Heritage were genuine people seeking to build families." After providing a DNA sample, Mark was quiet on the drive back to the hotel. "Talk to me," Lauren finally said. "What are you thinking?" "What if everything I thought about myself is a lie?" His voice cracked. "What if I was stolen? What if my birth parents have been searching for me all these years?" Lauren had no answers, only her unwavering support. "Whatever we learn, we'll face it together." That evening, while Mark took Ethan out for ice cream. A desperate attempt at normalcy. Lauren received a call from Nurse Chambers. "Mrs. Bennett, you need to come quickly. Evelyn Miller is having one of her lucid periods and asking for you. Says she has something important to tell you about the judge." Lauren arrived at the nursing home 30 minutes later to find Detective Reyes already there, recording equipment ready. Evelyn Miller sat upright in her bed, her eyes clear and focused in a way they hadn't been during Lauren's previous visit. "You came back," she said, her voice stronger than before. "Good. I need to make things right before I die." "Mrs. Miller," Reyes began formally, "I'm Detective Olivia Reyes. Anything you tell us could be used in an investigation. Do you understand?" Evelyn nodded. "I've been carrying these secrets for decades. It's time the truth came out." For the next hour, Evelyn described in chilling detail how her husband's trafficking operation worked. As a respected social worker, Harold Miller had access to vulnerable children, those without strong family connections, those whose disappearances wouldn't raise alarms. Harold said he was saving them from worse fates. Evelyn explained, her hands trembling, placing them with people who could give them better lives than the system ever would. "But I always knew it was about the money." "And the judge?" Reyes prompted. "Judge Thomas Whitmore," Evelyn said clearly. "He ran everything. Harold just supplied the children. Thomas had the clients, wealthy people willing to pay for children without questions or paperwork. Some wanted children to raise. Others wanted them for other purposes." Her voice broke. Lauren felt physically ill. Judge Whitmore had been a highly respected figure in the community, a champion of children's causes on paper. "Mrs. Miller, do you have any records? Anything that could help us identify these children or the people who took them?" Evelyn's cloudy eyes fixed on Lauren. "The storage unit, Unit 49 at Safekeep Storage on Westfield Road. Harold kept everything. I've paid the bills all these years, afraid of what would happen if someone found it." As they left, Reyes immediately called for a search warrant for the storage unit. "This could break the entire case wide open," she said. "Names, dates, records. Miller kept." "What about Judge Whitmore?" Lauren asked. "Died 3 years ago," Reyes replied grimly. "But if we can identify his clients, there may still be justice for these children." Back at the hotel, Lauren found Mark sitting alone in the dark, Ethan already asleep. "The detective called," he said quietly. "My DNA matches 2 samples from the room, and it shows a probable sibling relationship with remains found in a state park in 1989. A John Doe, never identified." Lauren sat beside him, taking his hand. "Mark, I had a brother, Lauren. A brother who didn't make it out of that trafficking ring." His voice broke. "And somewhere out there, I might have birth parents who never stopped looking for their stolen children. We'll find the truth," Lauren promised. "For your brother, for you, for all of them." The next morning, Lauren received a text from Detective Reyes. "Storage unit secured. You need to see this. Can you come alone?" Leaving Mark with Ethan, Lauren drove to Safekeep Storage. The facility manager led her to Unit 49, where Reyes and a forensic team were already cataloging contents. "It's all here," Reyes said, her face grim but triumphant. 3 decades of records. Names of children, where they came from, where they went, financial transactions, even photographs. Lauren surveyed the unit, in stunned silence. Filing cabinets lined the walls. Boxes of photographs and documents filled the floor space. A meticulous record of human trafficking, hidden in plain sight for decades. "We've already identified 28 children who passed through that room in your house," Reyes continued. "Some were placed with legitimate adoptive families who had no idea. Others..." She trailed off. "Others weren't so lucky," Lauren finished. "No, but now, finally, we can give them names. Identities. The recognition they deserve." As they sorted through the files, Lauren came across a folder labeled Bennett, M.W. Inside was a photograph of an infant, a hospital bracelet, and adoption paperwork for Mark Alexander Bennett. "His original name was Matthew Keller," Reyes said quietly, reading the documents. taken from a hospital in Columbus 3 days after birth. His mother was told he died of complications. Lauren's hands shook as she held the file. And his brother? Reyes pulled another folder. Michael Keller, 2 years older. The remains found in 1989. Their parents? We're looking for them now. Karen Keller was 19 when Matthew Mark was born. She never had more children. Lauren closed the file. Determination replacing her horror. I want to be there when you find her. Mark deserves to know his story. All of it. And she deserves to know her son survived. As they prepared to leave, Lauren's phone rang. Mark, his voice tight with panic. Lauren, someone broke into the hotel room while Ethan and I were at the pool. They left a message on the mirror. Last warning. Are you both okay? We're fine, but scared. The hotel called police. Stay there, Lauren said firmly. I'm on my way with Detective Reyes. As they rushed to the car, Reyes's phone rang. After a brief conversation, her expression turned grim. That was the station. Evelyn Miller was found dead in her room an hour ago. Initial assessment suggests someone tampered with her medication. Lauren's blood ran cold. They're silencing witnesses. But who? Whitmore is dead. Miller is dead. But some of their clients are still very much alive, Reyes said grimly. People with wealth and power who don't want their secrets exposed. As they drove toward the hotel, Lauren realized the danger wasn't over. It was escalating. Someone was willing to kill to keep the past buried, and her family was directly in their crosshairs. Armed officers guarded the hotel suite, where Mark and Ethan had been moved. Lauren embraced them both fiercely, Ethan confused by the commotion, Mark's eyes haunted with his newly discovered past. They're bringing in a protective detail, Detective Reyes explained. Until we identify who's behind these threats, you'll have round-the-clock protection. Later, when Ethan was asleep, Lauren showed Mark the file from the storage unit. He stared at the infant photo, touching it with trembling fingers. Matthew Keller, he whispered, trying out his birth name. And I had a brother. Michael. Reyes is trying to locate your birth mother, Lauren said gently. Karen Keller. She was told you died as a newborn. Mark looked up, eyes swimming with tears. She spent 40 years believing both her children were dead, but one of them wasn't. One of them grew up to become a wonderful man, a loving father and husband. Lauren squeezed his hand. That truth might mean everything to her. The next morning, Reyes called with news. They'd located Karen Keller, now Karen Wilson, living in Cincinnati. She had agreed to meet with them. I'll go alone, Mark decided after hours of deliberation. I need to do this first step by myself. Lauren understood, though it broke her heart to watch him leave. Vulnerability etched in every line of his body. She remained in the protected hotel suite, with Ethan, trying to maintain normalcy while officers stood guard outside. Throughout the day, updates from the investigation continued to arrive. The contents of the storage unit had blown the case wide open. Over 30 years of operation, hundreds of children had passed through Miller's network. Some, like Mark, had been placed with unsuspecting adoptive families. Others had disappeared into the homes of wealthy clients willing to pay for children without legal scrutiny. We've identified 3 prominent individuals still living who were major clients. Reyes reported by phone. A retired state senator, a banking executive, and a surgeon. Arrests are being coordinated simultaneously. What about the person threatening us? Lauren asked. We believe it's connected to one of these arrests. The surgeon, Dr. Lawrence Phillips, had a son who works for the hospital where your husband's medical records were accessed last week. The pieces were falling into place. Phillips must have recognized Mark's name from his father's connection to the trafficking ring, realized the investigation could expose his family, and tried to silence them. Around dinner time, Mark returned from Cincinnati, his face transformed by the meeting with his birth mother. She never stopped looking, he said, voice thick with emotion. Never stopped believing somewhere in her heart that the hospital had lied about my death. She had pictures of Michael everywhere, school photos up until he disappeared at 9 years old, and next to them, a computer-generated image of what her baby might have looked like growing up. Lauren held him as he cried, releasing 40 years of unknown grief. She's coming here tomorrow, he continued. Wants to meet you and Ethan. She's been a grandmother all these years and never knew it. That night, as they lay awake in the unfamiliar hotel room, Lauren asked the question that had been haunting her. What do we do about the house? Can we ever live there again, knowing what happened? Mark was quiet for a long moment. I don't think I can walk into that basement every day and not see those walls, not think about the children who suffered there, including my brother. Me neither, Lauren admitted. But walking away feels like, I don't know, like we're abandoning them somehow. Or maybe, Mark suggested, we honor them better by making sure this never happens again, using what we've learned to protect other children. The next day brought chaos and resolution in equal measure. Dr. Phillips and his son were arrested attempting to flee the country. The records from the storage unit provided evidence for dozens of new investigations and re-examinations of cold cases. And Karen Wilson arrived, a small woman with Mark's eyes and gentle smile. She embraced her son, her Matthew with 40 years of pent-up maternal love. When she met Ethan, her grandson, she wept openly. I never thought I'd live to see this day, she told Lauren. To know that one of my boys survived, thrived. It's more than I ever dared hope for. That evening, surrounded by their expanded family and with the immediate threat contained, Lauren and Mark made their decision. We can't live in that house, Lauren told Detective Reyes, but we don't want to sell it to some unsuspecting family either. What are you thinking? Reyes asked. We want to donate it, Mark explained. Turn it into something that honors the children who suffered there. Maybe a center for advocacy or therapy for foster children. The Hidden Children Foundation, Lauren added. A place that ensures what happened there can never happen again. 1 week later, with Phillips and his co-conspirators in custody and the case making national headlines, Lauren stood with Mark, Ethan, and Karen outside their house on Maple Street for the last time. Max sat dutifully beside them, his job as truth revealer complete. Are we saying goodbye to our house? Ethan asked, clutching his dinosaur. Yes, buddy, Mark said, kneeling to his level. But we're also saying hello to all the good things that will happen here in the future. Lauren surveyed the colonial with new eyes. No longer a house of horrors, but a place of transformation. Where once children were hidden away, now they would be seen, heard, and protected. Ready? She asked her family, her expanded, complicated, healing family. Together, they turned toward their future, leaving the house behind but carrying its lessons forward. The secrets behind the wall had been exposed to light, and in that light, healing could finally begin. 6 months later, Lauren stood at the podium, sunlight streaming through the windows of what had once been her living room. The space had been transformed, walls removed to create an open, airy center, filled with comfortable furniture, children's artwork, and resources for families. Welcome to the official opening of the Hidden Children Foundation, she began, looking out at the gathered crowd. Journalists, community members, survivors, and officials filled the room. 6 months ago, this house held terrible secrets. Today, it stands as a promise that no child will ever be forgotten or invisible again. In the front row sat Mark beside his mother Karen, with Ethan fidgeting between them. Max lay at their feet, gray now showing around his muzzle, but still alert, still watchful. The journey to this moment had been arduous. The investigation had ultimately identified 133 children who had passed through Miller's network over 3 decades. 47 had been placed with legitimate adoptive families, unaware of their children's origins. 32 had been sold to wealthy clients specifically seeking children outside legal channels. The fates of 64 remained unknown or confirmed deceased. Mark's brother Michael had finally received a proper burial, his remains laid to rest with his name restored. Karen had placed 40 years of birthday cards, written faithfully each year to children she believed gone, in his casket. This center will serve 3 purposes, Lauren continued. First, as an advocacy hub for foster care reform and child protection. Second, as a therapeutic space where children and families affected by trafficking can heal. And third, as a memorial to those who passed through these walls, both those who survived and those who didn't. She gestured to the east wall, where a mosaic of tiles displayed the names of every identified child from Miller's records. Some tiles bore only initials or dates, placeholders for those still unidentified. Each child mattered, Lauren said firmly. Each deserved protection they didn't receive. By remembering them, by speaking their names, we affirm their value and our commitment that such failures never happen again. After the ceremony, as visitors toured the facility, Sarah Winters approached Lauren in what had once been the kitchen. "You've done something remarkable here," Sarah said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I never imagined this house could become something beautiful. None of this would have happened without your courage." Lauren replied, "Your notebook broke the case wide open." Sarah smiled sadly. "Emily would have been 40 this year. I like to think she knows, somehow, that she wasn't forgotten. Her name is the centerpiece of the memorial wall," Lauren assured her. "No one who enters this building will forget her." Later that evening, after the crowds had dispersed, Lauren and Mark stood alone in the basement. The hidden room had been opened completely, its walls removed to expand the space. Now it housed a bright, inviting playroom for therapy sessions. Darkness replaced with light, confinement transformed into freedom. "Michael was kept here," Mark said quietly, touching the colorful wall that had once been marked with tally lines. "My brother spent his last days in this space." Lauren took his hand. "And now, other children will find healing here instead of harm." They had debated extensively about keeping the house. Ultimately, the decision to transform rather than abandon it had felt right. A reclamation rather than a retreat. Their new home, a comfortable farmhouse on the outskirts of town, awaited their return. Karen had relocated to be near them, forming a close bond with Ethan and helping him understand his father's complicated history in age-appropriate ways. "Ready to go home?" Lauren asked. Mark nodded, taking a final look around. "You know, when Max first started barking at that wall, I thought he was just being a silly dog." He shook his head. He knew. Somehow he sensed what had happened here, what needed to be revealed. "Animals perceive things we can't," Lauren agreed, scratching Max behind the ears as he waited patiently by the stairs. "He's the real hero of this story." As they climbed the stairs one last time, leaving the foundation in the capable hands of its newly hired staff, Lauren reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The horror of their discovery had led to justice for countless victims, reunion for families torn apart, and a new purpose for both her and Mark. The house that had once held darkness now stood as a beacon, its terrible secrets transformed into powerful testimony. Not every story had found resolution. Some children remained unidentified. Some perpetrators had died before facing justice, but the truth had emerged into the light. Outside, the setting sun cast long shadows across the lawn where a memorial garden bloomed. Small stones, each bearing a name or initials, created a winding path among the flowers. At the center stood a simple plaque. "For the children who were hidden, you are seen now. You matter now. You always mattered." As they walked to their car, Ethan running ahead with Max, Lauren took Mark's hand. "We didn't get the fresh start we expected when we moved here," she said. Mark squeezed her fingers. "No, we got something much more important instead." Behind them, the house, no longer their burden but their legacy, stood transformed against the darkening sky, its windows glowing with welcoming light, ready to serve its new purpose, remembering the past while protecting the future. That's the end of our story. Some secrets demand to be uncovered, no matter how deeply they're buried. The children hidden behind that basement wall had waited decades for someone to hear their silent cries, for someone like Max to recognize what humans had overlooked. Lauren's discovery didn't just expose darkness, it created space for healing, truth, and remembrance. Perhaps the most profound acts of courage aren't found in grand heroism, but in refusing to look away when confronted with uncomfortable truths. What would you have done if you discovered something so horrifying in your own home? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to hear more powerful tales, just like this. Our next story is already on screen, and trust me, it's one you won't want to miss.